Kansas, 1879. The heat was the kind that crawled into your bones and stayed there. Dust hung in the air like it had no place else to go, coating tongues, boots, pride. The town of Elbridge wasn't more than a scattering of wooden bones trying to pass for a settlement. 2 saloons, a chapel with cracked glass, and a main street where silence hit harder than bullets. Callum Voss rode in slow. His horse was lean, but steady, like him, built for endurance, not flash. He had a saddlebag of tools and a rifle strapped tight. He wasn't looking for trouble, just meant to sell a few horses and be gone before sundown. But trouble doesn't ask permission. Ahead, near a crumbling homestead that looked like it had been spit out by the earth, a woman was on her knees in the dirt. Her hair stuck to her cheek, tangled and wet with blood. Her dress, what was left of it, hung from her shoulder like a rag ready for burning. She clutched something against her chest. A baby, another one, no older than the first, clung to her leg, crying without sound, like she'd learned early not to expect help. 2 men, older, harder, sunburnt into cruelty, were dragging her across the ground like a sack of feed. Behind them, a middle-aged woman hollered like a crow, shouting about curses and disgrace. No sons, the older man spat. All that birthing for nothing but trouble. She brought a curse, the woman shrieked. Ain't right to bleed for 9 months and push out 2 useless mouths. The preacher stood on the porch of the chapel, his head lowered, hands clasped. He did nothing. Neither did the shopkeeper, nor the blacksmith, nor the widow watching from the balcony. Callum Voss did. He slid off his horse, quiet as dusk. The dust kicked up around his boots as he walked toward the chaos. His spurs didn't jingle. His eyes didn't blink. He stopped within 10 feet of the men. They didn't notice him right away, too busy being cruel. When the brother-in-law raised his hand to strike the woman again, Callum caught his wrist mid-air. The world froze. The man looked down at the gloved hand holding his. Callum didn't shout. He didn't posture. He just said, "That's not yours to touch anymore." The man yanked his arm back and grabbed for a knife, but he wasn't fast enough. Callum's boot swept his legs, dropping him hard in the dirt. The woman gasped, tried to crawl away, shielding her daughters. Callum looked to her. His voice didn't rise above the wind. "You're coming with me." She didn't move. He shrugged off his duster coat, kneeling beside her. One of the babies had a bloodied lip from a fall. He wrapped her carefully in the coat, cradling her to his chest. Then he extended his hand to the other twin. The child looked up, confused, scared, but didn't pull away. The mother, Lena Mae, was still frozen. "I ain't a skin twice," he said. Behind him, the other in-law shouted, "She's not yours, mister. She's family." Callum didn't even glance back. "She ain't yours either." Lena pushed herself up. She limped, barefoot, her body trembling like her bones were barely holding. But she followed him, not because she trusted him, but because anything was better than staying. He led them to his horse, lifted the twins into a side pouch lined with sheepskin, fashioned like a saddle cradle. Lena climbed up behind him with a wince. As they rode away, the town stood still. No one stopped them. No one offered help. The wind picked up behind them, carrying dust and curses and every name they were called. But none of that mattered, because for the first time in a long time, someone had said, "You're coming with me," and meant it. The ride to Callum's ranch was long and quiet, the kind of quiet that felt more like a truce than peace. Lena didn't speak, just held her girls close, her cheek pressed to their soft hair, as if the scent alone could keep her from breaking apart. Callum didn't look back once. He knew better than to fill silence with words that didn't matter. By the time the sun fell behind the ridge, they reached the edge of Callum's land. The dried-up creek whispered in the dark, like it once held water but forgot how. Pine trees lined the hill to the north, tall and still. The cabin sat low, worn with weather and time. A single window glowed faintly orange from the fire inside. The barn leaned slightly west like it had survived something the others didn't. There was no gate, just 2 wooden posts, half buried in dust. "This is it," Callum said. Lena didn't reply. She climbed off the horse, slow, her body stiff from bruises and fear. She held both babies, one on each hip, swaying slightly from the weight. She looked at the cabin like a stranger might look at a church, hopeful but suspicious. Inside, it was simple. A cot by the wall, a table with one chair, a wood stove. Fire crackled in the hearth, casting shadows against the pine-paneled walls. A tin kettle whistled softly, forgotten atop the stove. Lena stood near the door, unsure if she should step farther. Callum took the girls gently from her arms, laying them in a basket by the hearth padded with lamb's wool. Then he stoked the fire, shifting a few logs into place. "You can sleep near the heat," he said, unrolling a spare blanket and laying it out. "There's room by the fire." She didn't move. Her eyes were on the floor. She gripped the fabric of her torn dress like it was the only thing tethering her to herself. "I'll work," she murmured. "I can clean, cook, whatever you need. I ain't looking for charity." Callum didn't answer, just poured 2 cups of boiled water and slid one across the table toward her. She didn't touch it. That night, the twins woke up crying. Lena crouched over them, rocking, whispering broken lullabies with a cracked voice. Her body shook as she sang. At one point, her sobbing outpaced the baby's. She tried to hide it, burying her face against the crib edge. Callum didn't speak. He simply added more wood to the fire and turned his back so she could cry without witness. By morning, the world outside was cold and pale. Frost bit the grass, and the creek hissed with silence. Lena emerged from the cabin barefoot, wrapped in the coat he'd given her. Her dress was gone, burnt the night before. She'd done it without a word, feeding it to the fire one piece at a time. What was left of her old life had turned to smoke, and maybe there was mercy. Callum had left an old cotton shirt folded on the table. She wore it now. Too long, sleeves rolled but clean. She moved with quiet purpose, milking the goat behind the barn, hanging a pot to boil water. Later, she fixed the loose hinge on the door with a bent nail and a rock. Callum noticed, said nothing. Days passed like pages turning. The fence leaned worse with every wind, and Callum spent afternoons reinforcing it. Lena watched from the porch, holding one twin while the other tried to crawl after a chicken. One afternoon, she saw him outside carving something into the beam above the porch. She squinted, frowning. "What's that?" she asked, the first real question she'd spoken. Callum kept working, a knife blade moving in quiet strokes. When he stepped back, she saw it, LM and Voss girls etched into the wood. She stared at it, eyes filling but not spilling. "They don't have names yet," she said softly. Callum nodded once. "Then let's start there." But the outside world had a long memory, and not all memories die with dust. A week after they arrived, a rider appeared on the ridge at dusk, a black silhouette against the blood-orange sky. Lena froze at the window. Callum stepped out with a rifle slung low across his shoulder. The rider stayed just long enough to be seen, then turned and vanished back over the hills. The next morning, Callum found a rabbit nailed to the fence. Fresh blood, flies already gathering. He yanked it off without a word, buried it in the ash pit. But something shifted in him after that. He cleaned his revolvers, reinforced the barn door. Lena noticed, but didn't ask. That night, he added more wood to the fire than usual. The wind howled outside like it remembered something, too. Inside, the cabin was still, warm. Lena sat on the floor with the girls sleeping against her thighs. She looked up at Callum, shadows flickering across her face. Her voice was barely a breath. "Why'd you help me?" Callum sat down across from her, looked at the fire, not her. "Didn't know I needed to," he said, till I saw him not. The twins stirred, but only for a moment. Outside, the wind blew on. Inside, there was room by the fire. The wind shifted just before sundown. Lena stood by the creek, scrubbing laundry against a smooth stone, the water low and silent like it was holding its breath. One of the twins slept in a crate lined with straw. The other cooed from a blanket, sucking on her fingers, too new to understand the way the air tensed. Later that night, with the girls asleep and a stew bubbling on the stove, Lena spoke. Not because she was ready, but because silence had become too heavy. "My husband died in a stampede," she said, eyes fixed on the fire. "One of the young bulls got spooked and ran. The rest followed. He was out there trying to come, and they trampled him clean through. Said there weren't enough left to bury. Callum didn't respond right away, just tossed another log onto the fire, sending a flurry of sparks up the flue. They said it was my fault. Said I weakened him, taking all his strength to give him girls. Two of them. No sons. No heirs. She let the words settle. Her hands were shaking, but not from the cold. Callum finally said, "That ain't a burden to carry." "But I do," she said. "Every day." That night, after Lena and the girls were asleep, Callum walked out to the hill behind the barn. The moon carved silver along the grass. There was already a grave there, his wife's. Been there 6 winters now. He stood beside a long while, hands in his coat pockets, face unreadable. Then he took a spade and began to dig. By dawn, a second grave lay beside the first. No marqueur, no name, just a space carved out of hard earth. A symbol, not for death, but for dignity. When Lena saw it the next morning, she didn't ask. Just nodded once, eyes glassy. Respect met respect. That week, something shifted. The girls laughed. Both of them, giggling in a sunbeam as they chased a chicken across the dirt yard. Lena stopped stirring porridge just to watch, hands still covered in flour. It was the kind of sound the cabin hadn't heard in years, bright, full of life, untouched by the world. That afternoon, Lena tore apart an old curtain and began stitching it into a dress. It was rough, uneven at the hem, and the sleeves didn't match. But when she slipped it on, she stood straighter, brighter. Callum caught her looking at herself in the window reflection. She turned, ready to be embarrassed. But he smiled, a real one, quick and crooked, like his face had forgotten how, but just remembered. Then smoke appeared on the horizon. A thin, dark thread rising behind the southern ridge, wrong direction, wrong time. Callum went stiff. His eyes narrowed. He stepped off the porch without a word, heading straight to the barn. Lena followed, already clutching the girls close. "It's them, isn't it?" He didn't answer, just began moving with purpose, controlled, quiet. He loaded his rifle, checked the shotgun, sharpened a blade against a whetstone that sang through the dusk. He pulled nails from a jar and began boarding up the windows. Lena placed the babies in a wash basin under the floor trap. She looked at Callum's hands. How steady they were. Like this wasn't his first time waiting for a fight. "I should go," she said, voice raw. "They want me. Not you. If I leave now, maybe—" Callum didn't look at her. "I buried my silence years ago," he said. "Ain't burying you." Night fell too fast. The first gunshot cracked the stillness like lightning. The barn went up in flames, fire spilling out from the hayloft, horses screaming as they tore their ropes. Callum took position by the window, rifle braced on a saddlebag. He counted shadows moving through the trees. At least 5. Another shot. The window shattered above Lena's head. She didn't scream. She reached down, pulled up a baby, cradled her under the floorboards, whispered nonsense lullabies, covered the other with her body. A man burst through the front door. Callum's shot missed. Too fast, too close. The attacker raised a hammer, but didn't see Lena behind the stove. She swung a cast iron skillet into his skull with everything she had. He dropped. Hard. Another shadow at the door, this one with a rifle. Callum fired. The man jerked back, hit the ground before he finished cursing. They kept coming. 2 more, trying to flank around back. Callum moved outside, fast and low. Took out one with a blast from the shotgun. The other fled, leaving a trail of blood behind him. And then it was over. Smoke curled from the barn skeleton. Firelight painted the sky orange and black. 3 men lay dead. One was groaning in the dirt. The others had run. Lena stood in the doorway, holding one baby tight against her chest, blood on her dress, not all of it hers. Her hair clung to her face in damp strands. Her chest rose and fell like she hadn't remembered to breathe. Callum stood nearby, rifle still in hand. Neither of them said a word. Dawn broke slow, pale and cold. The girls woke, blinking at the smoke like it was a dream. Lena placed the babies in a wash basin under the floor trap. She looked at Callum's hands. How steady they were. Like this wasn't his first time waiting for a fight. "I should go," she said, voice raw. "They want me. Not you. If I leave now, maybe—" Callum didn't look at her. "I buried my silence years ago," he said. "Ain't burying you." Night fell too fast. The first gunshot cracked the stillness like lightning. The barn went up in flames, fire spilling out from the hayloft, horses screaming as they tore their ropes. Callum took position by the window, rifle braced on a saddlebag. He counted shadows moving through the trees. At least 5. Another shot. The window shattered above Lena's head. She didn't scream. She reached down, pulled up a baby, cradled her under the floorboards, whispered nonsense lullabies, covered the other with her body. A man burst through the front door. Callum's shot missed. Too fast, too close. The attacker raised a hammer, but didn't see Lena behind the stove. She swung a cast iron skillet into his skull with everything she had. He dropped. Hard. Another shadow at the door, this one with a rifle. Callum fired. The man jerked back, hit the ground before he finished cursing. They kept coming. 2 more, trying to flank around back. Callum moved outside, fast and low. Took out one with a blast from the shotgun. The other fled, leaving a trail of blood behind him. And then it was over. Smoke curled from the barn skeleton. Firelight painted the sky orange and black. 3 men lay dead. One was groaning in the dirt. The others had run. Lena stood in the doorway, holding one baby tight against her chest, blood on her dress, not all of it hers. Her hair clung to her face in damp strands. Her chest rose and fell like she hadn't remembered to breathe. Callum stood nearby, rifle still in hand. Neither of them said a word. Dawn broke slow, pale and cold. The girls woke, blinking at the smoke like it was a dream. Lena stepped beside Callum. She didn't flinch when he offered his coat. Instead, she took it in his hand. Morning rolled in heavy and slow, like the land itself was reluctant to open its eyes after the violence. Smoke coiled from the black skeleton of the barn, trailing into the soft blue sky as if rising prayers from a place long forgotten by grace. The bodies had been dragged to the edge of the property. The man Lena had knocked cold didn't survive the night. His breath gave out in the dirt, his mouth caked with ash and blood. No one came to claim him. Lena stood over one of the graves, shovel in her hands, arms trembling from more than fatigue. Her dress was torn at the hem, stained from knee to ankle, her hands blistered raw. No priest would bury him, she said. Callum stood beside her, shovel over one shoulder. He didn't answer, just began to dig. They worked in silence, not out of anger or grief, but something deeper, a respect for what could not be undone. By midday, 3 graves sat side by side behind the burn barn. Nothing marked them but stones, just enough to keep memory honest. Back in the cabin, the girls had crawled into Callum's lap. One nestled against his ribs, the other tugged gently on his collar as she dozed. Callum held still, letting them settle into the curve of him like they'd always belonged there. Lena watched from across the room. She didn't speak, just folded laundry with steady hands. Callum shifted, then reached for a small tin box beneath the cot. From it, he pulled a letter, yellowed at the edges, sealed once with wax that had long since cracked. He unfolded it carefully, the way one holds fragile things. "My wife wrote this," he said, "a few weeks before she passed." Lena looked up. She couldn't bear children. "We tried. And when the trying failed, she said she didn't want me to die, full of words I never said." He cleared his throat, voice low and worn. "If you find someone with more heart than pain, Callum, don't be a coward. Don't wait for permission to be whole again." The girls stirred gently. Lena swallowed. "You still hold him back?" she asked. He looked at her. Didn't blink. Not anymore. Later that evening, Lena stepped outside and found him repainting the mailbox. The old letters, worn, barely legible, were scrubbed clean. He dipped the brush again, steady strokes. She leaned against the porch post. "What are you writing?" He didn't turn. "The Voss family." She scoffed, soft but sharp. "Ain't that a lie?" Callum glanced over his shoulder. "Not if you want it to be true." That night, no one lit the fire. The heat was warm enough, and the silence didn't need filling. The girls slept curled between them, safe and soft. For once, nobody cried. Come morning, a rider appeared down the ridge road. His coat was clean, his boots unscuffed. A land surveyor, government contract. Paperwork flapped in his satchel. He dismounted at the gate, tipped his hat. "Miss Lena Mae?" She stepped forward, shielding her eyes from the sun. Callum stood back, rifle resting in the crook of his arm. The man pulled a folder. Looks like the homestead your husband left behind's in probate. With the right signatures, you can reclaim it. It's still yours if you want it. She hesitated. The wind picked up, tugging at the hem of her curtain-stitched dress. She looked out across the field, at the barn ruins, the graves, the smoke-blackened fence. Then she looked at the porch. Callum sat with one girl asleep in his arms, the other curled against his knee, tracing circles on his boot with her tiny finger. Lena turned back to the man. "We've buried enough ghosts," she said. "That land don't need me no more." He blinked, nodded, and rode off without another word. The sun climbed higher. By noon, Lena was hammering fence posts alongside Callum. She wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her wrist, the same wrist that once bore bruises, now wrapped in linen from cutting too much wood. The girls ran barefoot in the yard, chasing chickens, stumbling through clover. Their laughter rose above the creak of wood and iron. For once, it didn't sound like a miracle. It sounded normal. She paused, leaned on her post, and looked at him. What if they asked who their father was? Callum didn't look up, just drove the nail home with one clean swing. "You tell him," he said. It was the man who said, "You're coming with me." The sun dipped lower, golden against the ridge. Somewhere in the trees, a hawk called out once before flying west. And in a corner of the prairie, a new family stood, not born but built. Some people you're born to, some you choose along the way. If that's family to you, subscribe and share this story. The Frontier remembers.